Hello everyone, this is Mr. Reimer. This video is for Friday, September 18th and Monday, September 19th. It is entitled Comparison of Early Civilizations. In this lesson, we will analyze the development of early civilizations by writing a short body paragraph in which you compare the Indus River Valley Civilization and ancient China, using two of the course themes. But first, let's preview. Let's get our brains awake and moving. Think back to our lesson last time on ancient Sumer or ancient Egypt. If you could be transported back in time, would you rather visit ancient Sumer or ancient Egypt? Explain why. Or would your answer be different if you knew you had to live there permanently? So whether you are on your own or in class, I want you to be answering this. If you're in class, I'll see you in the chat and I'll be looking for those responses. Pause the video. All right. Before we get to ancient Egypt and the Indus River Valley Civilization, I want to do a review in this lesson of what we did last time. And I also want to highlight some things that I may have gone too quickly over. We talked about what makes a civilization, and I threw a lot of words at you related to governance. And so I wanted to step back and make sure we understand these words. First, just what is a government? What does it do? Three key things. It provides order in a society, usually with laws. Protection, usually with the military. And then public goods. These are goods that everyone can use. Some examples today are roads and bridges. But back then, these Neolithic villages that grew into the cities of the early civilizations, the public goods were those irrigation projects and those walls, right, that were so critical for the survival. Not one person could manage the irrigation network or maintain the wall. He wasn't going to do it by himself, but if he gathered together with other people, then they could all manage those projects. And so that group, that organization, we call a government. But we talked about a couple of different kinds of governments last time. We talked about a monarchy, and let's make sure we understand what we're talking about. A single ruler with supreme power, one guy in charge, and that one guy, sometimes a gal, but usually a guy, inherited his power from the previous generation. Power passed through the family. The other kind of government we talked about is a theocracy, and it's there in the word. Theo, Greek for God, Chrisi, rule by. This is ruled by not God, but God's representatives, the religious leaders. Okay. And lastly, these governments, they required some help. They required government officials to collect the taxes and make sure people were building the wall correctly and were recording the laws. Right? We call this the bureaucracy. By the way, I'm a bureaucrat. I am a government official. I am paid by the city government of Fort Worth to teach. All right. Remember last time we made get sick notes, and I told you I didn't tell you where to put the information. I had you sort it yourselves. And so now I want to go back and tell you where I would have sorted the information and to see and have you check your work. If you put it in a different category, does it mean that it's wrong? No, not necessarily. Right? A lot of this information can fit into different categories. This is how I did it. All right. So here are characteristics of the government in ancient Sumer. Remember, government is about the laws and about the rulers. Okay. And I didn't really talk about King Hammurabi and his code. King Hammurabi was the first to put down the laws written in stone, and literally they were in stone. And you might have heard of some of these laws, like an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth as punishment. This law code became the basis for many subsequent law codes, such as the law codes in the Jewish Torah, the Christian Old Testament. But also, what's so key about laws is that when they're written down, like King Hammurabi's, they were orderly and predictable. The ruler couldn't just make them up, right, if they were written down. So this is a key innovation in the area of governance. All right. Here is information on economic systems. Remember, economy has to do with goods and services being produced. Look, these are the goods they produced. Yeah, they came from the ground, and so you might have put them in interactions with the environment, and that would have been just fine. Okay. Also, we look at systems as in what kind of trading are they doing, and I told you they were carrying on trade with Egypt and Indus and sometimes with silver. All right. This is information on the technology in ancient Sumer. Remember, these are devices that help make our lives easier and more efficient. Okay. I said they used geometry last time. They were the first to use. So many of the inventions of the Sumerians were the first, right? The wheel, bronze, first to use geography, and the first to create a solar calendar, or a calendar based on the sun. However, they had a kind of strange calendar. They only used the solar calendar for years, and they used a lunar calendar for the months. And so every so often, they had to do some funny math in order to get the two calendars to match up. Known as a lunisolar calendar. We don't use it anymore, but they did. All right. This information all about social developments. Remember, these have to do with classes and inequalities and relations between men and women. So hopefully you put all of this information in your box on social developments. All right. This is a new slide. All right. So if you were just following along in your notes, I would suggest start adding some, because I didn't really talk about how heavily dependent the Sumerians were on irrigation. Okay, remember I did say that the rivers flooded quite sporadically and violently, and because they were not regular, the farmers in ancient Sumer had to have backup supplies of water, right? And they did that in a number of ways. Sometimes they created reservoirs so they could have a pool of water to draw from. They created this shaduth where you could, transfer the water from the pool to the fields, or they dug ditches, what we call canals, to get the water from the rivers to the fields. They built dikes, which are like small dams, to divert the river to where they wanted it to go. All of these projects required enormous cooperation. How did they do that? With their governments. All right. This information, cultural development, right? This is what makes a people unique, their way of life. We talked about their gods. We talked about their priests and their rituals. Hopefully you put this information in cultural development. All right. Now let's turn to ancient Egypt. Again, I'm reviewing where you put this information on your Get Sick chart. It doesn't have to be, you could have put it somewhere else, but this is where I would have put it. So governance in ancient Egypt, we're talking about their king, who's known as the Pharaoh. Is this a theocracy? Yes, right? Because he's considered like the son of the god, right? He's considered a god. So he's also considered head of their religion. So religious leader, theocracy. All right. Economic systems. Again, what were they producing? How are they trading? There it is. Hopefully you put that in. The E for Get Sick. Here's some more about their technology. They also had a calendar, but a different calendar. Theirs was completely solar, right? 24-hour day, 365 day. That is a solar calendar. They were really unique in the ancient world to have a purely solar calendar. We talked about social developments, right? They're powerful priests, a bit more equality between the classes, a bit higher status for women. Some women even became pharaohs. And here's some more. This is their culture, right? Gods, their architecture. What were they making? But we talked about this, but this is a new slide, right? And sorry, it's out of order. I should have put it. I forgot to switch the slides. Anyway, the flooding, remember, of the Nile, much more regular, right? And so there wasn't as much of a need in ancient Egypt for irrigation projects. They still needed to do some, like they dug some ditches and some canals. But not like in ancient Sumer. However, the Nile was the lifeblood of the agriculture of ancient Egypt. They didn't get a lot of rainfall in ancient Egypt, and so the water they needed for their crops, it came primarily from the Nile. All right, that was our review of ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt. Right. Before we launch into the next portion, the next video, where we talk about ancient Egypt and the Indus River Valley civilization, let's pause and check for your understanding. So I want you to choose one theme besides interactions with the environment, because we did that last time. In 1 to 3 sentences, use the theme to make a comparison between ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt. Can I get this? Yeah, I'm going to get my picture out of the way. All right, so here's my example. Ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt were similar in the area of blank. A key feature of a topic sentence is when you tell me the main idea of the paragraph, right? And in a comparison paragraph, you're telling me in what area you're comparing. Don't give me the details in the first paragraph. Be broad. Then, in the next couple of sentences, you're going to give me details. They both had or did blank. And here's where you would put information from the boxes of your Get Sick chart. In ancient Sumer, blank, right? You're giving me concrete details like some key terms or the facts from the slides. And in ancient Egypt, blank. All right. Practice this skill of comparing now, and I'll see you in the chat or in the next video.